Hi there, I'm James Osborne, the co-founder of the Recruitment Network, and welcome to Recruitment TV. The place where we bring you the conversations, the ideas and insights shaping the future of recruitment right now. In each episode, we'll go behind the scenes with leaders building exceptional recruitment businesses, uncovering the decisions, the challenges and the strategies that are driving real growth. Recruitment TV explores the people and ideas moving the industry forward right now. Brought to you by the Recruitment Network, we're here to share the knowledge, experiences and inspiration that help recruitment businesses succeed in today's evolving world. So let's get started with this episode of Recruitment TV.
Welcome everyone to today's podcast. This is part of our super agency series where we're looking at what makes a super agency in the recruitment sector at the moment. What are they doing right? What are they getting better or doing better than other people at the moment? And how are they supercharging their business growth above the rest of the market? We're going to talk a little bit today. Our theme today, I suppose, is what we call about the evidence-based agency. I don't know who comes up with these titles, but we'll go with it anyway. But we're going to focus on this candidate and client experience piece, which is actually, I've literally just come off a call with someone else who's been producing some data all around this. So I've got a lot of stuff I'm going to share and talk about. But there is no one in our industry better suited or better qualified to talk about candidate and client experience than Justin. Justin Hillier, I'm sure most of you have met Justin before, have heard of Justin before. He runs a business called Recruitment Insider. I'd highly recommend anyone who wants to do a better job when it comes to candidate and client experience, to drive more referrals, more repeat business, more recommendations, to certainly have a look at Recruitment Insider, if not employ it within your business. A lot of the TRM members are big fans of it. I've heard nothing but good stuff about it whatsoever. I've heard a lot of bad stuff about Justin, but that's a completely different story, and we'll come on to that in a second. So, Justin, thanks for joining me today. Lovely to see you as always, and thank you for not mentioning the word data or cricket at any stage in the next half an hour or so.
I will do my best to do both. Let's just move on, shall we?
Let's just move on pretty quick. No, 100%. No, good. Let's get straight into it then. So let's just talk about the general principles around candidate experience, client experience, that type of stuff. When you look at, if you were to measure the quality, let's go to the health of a recruitment process, what does the data around candidate experience sort of tell us about that?
Look, I can only go by what we know from our experience when engaging with our agencies and how we actually built the platform in the first place. So if we want to go back to the very start, what I see and still see to this day, and remember, I came up with this platform 10 years ago now. There's still a lot of agencies in the market who are either A, not measuring the candidate client experience. They either may not see value in it, don't have it as a priority, which is something I often hear. Which is fascinating because this is literally feedback from your customers, your candidates and clients who generate revenue for you. So it should really be a priority in your business. But those agencies who are doing it and are doing it potentially themselves often ask a lot of questions that they want to know the answers to. So it's kind of a what's in it for me, not what is to the benefit of the candidate. What are their expectations? What do they want from you? So what's in it for them? So how we have a look at the candidate and client experience is essentially measuring the whole entire hiring process, not just the people that you place. Because, shock horror, James, they're already really happy. They've got a job, you've got the person that they were looking for. So when we have a look at the hiring process, I think there's one word that really stands out into how you should be going about this is specific. And I say that because there are some agencies out there still using NPS as their metric, which is really only a tool or a question you can ask at the placement stage. Now, some do ask it throughout, but you are then repeating the same question every time to the candidate. Would you recommend us? Would you recommend us? Would you recommend us? It gets boring, which dilutes your response rates thereafter because they're getting the same question again. They've already answered it. Why do they want to answer the same question again? So the specific elements of looking at the hiring process and asking the candidates, what do you expect from us at this stage of the process? And asking really specific questions around that. So you can then measure, are you meeting expectations? Are you developing your consultant skills at the same time? And how is all of that impacting your fill rate at the end of the day? Because that's what it's all about.
It's interesting. So the call I just had earlier on, and it was all about the evolving candidate experience and how AI is playing a part in that. So the actual, if you look at the sort of cycle of service, or however you want to define it, and all those interactions, how AI is playing a role now in some of those interactions, and where should it play a role, and does it improve or does it devalue the candidate experience, etc. It's really fascinating. It's amazing data which I'll share with you. But the one of the interesting points that the person I was speaking to made was that when we build out candidate experience sort of journeys or workflows, we very much focus on ourselves, to your point earlier. So we go, how do we make it quicker and more efficient so we can improve, job flow, all that type of stuff. When actually that's the wrong question, isn't it? We should be asking what makes it better for the candidate or the client.
Yeah, which is interesting because when you started leading there with AI, how's it going to improve the candidate experience? I was exactly thinking it's all for ourselves. The candidates, what we see in the question set we ask the candidate is more not so around efficiency or around effectiveness for the consultant to diminish their time on focusing on those tasks, or reducing that time is probably a better word. It's actually information. The candidates want specific information through the process and specific support through the process that only a consultant can provide. So yes, AI can certainly remove some tasks and some admin from the equation that, yes, from your side is going to improve things, or you think is going to improve the candidate experience, but you're still not asking the candidate what they want. And it's the same on the client side, to be fair, as well.
Mm-hmm. So then if you look at, and I can probably guess what your answer is going to be on this, but if you look at agencies across the UK, or across the globe for that matter, how many agencies do you think are actually probably flying blind when it comes to what is really happening on the candidate and client experience? Because to your point, actually the time people find out that the candidate experience is good, bad, or ugly is generally the time when the client leaves.
It's too late.
Yeah, it's too late. But that's a really good. Yeah. Okay. Well, at least we found out it was really bad. Okay, well done. So how many people do you think are, what's the percentage of companies that you think are just literally just flying blind at the moment around this?
Okay, well, you said you think you know the answer of what my answer is going to be. What do you think I'll say?
Loads.
Loads? Yeah, pretty close. I would say 99.9%.
Okay, fine. All right, fine.
If there's 30,000 approximate agencies in the UK.
Yeah.
29,999 minus recruiter insider clients. That's an incredibly, it feels like a loaded question you set me up for there. Everyone minus recruiter insider. Look, there's definitely going to be agencies outside of that who are measuring this to depth and degrees as well, doing it themselves. But yeah, look, it's going to be the mega majority. It's certainly not going to be the other way. And over the 10 years I've been running this business and came up with the whole idea, I guess the most primary pushback I've ever had, the most common one that comes through, is it's not a priority for us right now.
Mm-hmm.
We've got other things we're putting this system in, or we've just had a heap of change, or blah, blah, blah. These are your customers. These are the people that you're engaging with every day. Essentially what you're saying by not making it a priority is that they are not the most important part of your business.
Yeah.
They're not a priority for you right now. And I would love, I'm going to say it here. I don't say it directly to agencies when I'm talking to them one-on-one, but my thought is, well, if it's not a priority, can you stop engaging with candidates and clients then? Because if they're not the priority, what on earth is?
Yeah. I don't think they're going to do that, but I like your point. If you so let's break this down to a bit more depth then. So let's go into like the candidate experience piece. What would be some of the metrics that you would look at measuring on the candidate experience side of things, or the candidate journey?
So it's important to break down different steps of the process. And look, there could be 10 different moving parts of the candidate journey, from their first engagement on your website through to placement, through to post-placement. What's really important when you look at this, though, is to consider fatigue of asking questions, multiple questions or multiple surveys sent out throughout. So you need to be really specific at the junctures of when you're doing this and what is the value to the candidates to provide feedback. Not only from their perspective, but how is that going to then add value to your business? Because you could go berserk. You could go, right, how was the application process? And get some feedback there. How was the screening call? How was this? How was that? Like, you can go too far, which then you're not going to get the response when you get through to the end of the process because they're just fed up by that point.
Yeah, sure.
Be asking different questions throughout. So we've broken it down into 3 specific stages through the hiring process where there's a real engagement between the candidate and the consultant and or the client to have a look at essentially the interview stages and what's important in those stages that's going to impact the candidate's ability to screen themselves in or out, or vice versa for the consultant. But we're aligning all of this to the skills of the consultant as well. And what we consistently see is where those areas are falling down, shock horror, it comes back to the job brief. So you need to be getting feedback from your client, mirroring all of this at the same time through the process. So we've specifically mapped up the candidate journey to the client journey and asked similar questions at similar stages, so we can actually see where the impact is both sides.
Do you recommend that a recruiter would show the clients that journey map and how that translates to the candidate journey, so they can actually be almost like partnering with the recruiter to help them with this process, as opposed to just being a supplier?
Yeah, look, I think it's important to be transparent with the client to say that this is how we're going to measure this whole process, not just from a success perspective, because then you're just measuring the outcome.
Yeah.
And that outcome may take twice as long as what you were hoping for or had planned for or what your typical average is. But the most important thing is you don't know why that happened. And we see it time and time again in the data that when candidates drop off or the job isn't filled, it's had something to do with a part of the process that hasn't been done adequately.
Mm-hmm.
So marrying up both sides also allows you to really fully understand exactly where in the hiring process it's falling down and point back to the contributor to that, not just, hey, we didn't fill the job, or we did fill the job, fantastic, or oh, shock, we didn't fill it, what happened? So it removes that gut feel, and it allows you to look at every consultant completely differently then, because everyone's going to have different results and different things that they're better at than others in terms of managing the process. So what I find fascinating is that every agency looks at every process in their business. They'll look at their onboarding process, they'll look at their finance process, they'll look at their contractor process. Every process in the business they will measure and try and improve, except largely for one, the hiring process. It's the most important one. But unless you measure it, you can't improve it, but it relates to every other part of your business.
Interesting. So have you got any data, any case studies, any examples of where improving that candidate experience has actually impacted things like fill rates, referrals, repeat business, whatever metrics you think are the most important?
Yeah. So I've got a few examples. I'll focus on one particular data point to begin with, because it's actually the most impactful to fill rate. So of all the questions, of all the different points of the hiring process that we measure, there's one that impacts the fill rate the most. And it's actually the same question we ask on both perm and contract sides of the process. And it's explain interview process and timeframes. So when consultants score 95 plus on that question, the uplift on fill rate on perm is 41%.
So say it again. So 95% improvement when they ask the question.
No, so we score everything. So when a candidate provides feedback, it's scored out of 100 against every question, against every stage. So when that question alone, we have a look at the scores. When a consultant scores 95 plus satisfaction, essentially, from candidates on that, there is a 41% better result on fill rate than by scoring below 95.
Got you. Okay.
On contract, the exact same question, the exact same part of the process impacts fill rates by 97%. It almost doubles.
Okay.
So just one question. I often ask agencies, if you could improve your fill rate percentage by 10% today, would you just take that hands down and walk away and not ask any more questions? And of course, everyone says absolutely. But if you could improve it by 40% by improving one part of the process on perm and 97% on contract, that's where you start to have a real difference.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
That's one part. We've had a client also. We also have candidates, and I think this is a large part of the candidate experience that gets missed. In fact, it's probably the biggest part that gets missed. Is we have the candidates also review the hiring manager. So once they've interviewed with them, they respond to 5 questions specifically to that. We had a client, TRN member, who actually had a client they were trying to fill 7 jobs with and couldn't. and they had a look at the feedback from the candidates on the hiring managers, and they were scoring in the mid-50s out of 100.
Right.
So that agency took that data, went and showed it to this client, trained the hiring managers on how to better interview, went back out to market the following month with all 7 jobs, exact same salaries, exact same everything, and filled every one of those jobs in 6 weeks. And the hiring manager feedback scores were now up at 96. It makes a difference.
Yeah.
So, there's many more case studies I could run through, but they're just 2 examples of one data point and using the data with your client to reshape the hiring process.
I sort of listen to this, and my brain hurts sometimes when I listen to you talk. And nothing to do with anything. Just when I listen to you talk, but when I listen, it's such a no-brainer, right? It's so bloody obvious.
Yeah.
Yet a lot of people aren't doing it or aren't using it, etc., etc. Is this a cultural thing? Should recruitment leaders be incentivizing their consultants based on some of these scores and these metrics, or is it just like just a slap around the face? Come on, guys, this is bloody obvious. It's going to help you feel right.
Yeah. Now, this isn't you and I have not had this conversation about these questions, right? So you said one thing there that actually triggers one of the main things I talk to agencies about around incentivizing consultants. So I often and regularly ask agencies, are you a service or sales driven agency? Which one is your higher priority? And I kid you not, 99% of the time, they will say service.
Really?
Follow-up, 100%. They're all service-led. They're also, like, sales is obviously the function of the job, but they want to provide the best service and be known for providing the best service and provide the best service to their candidates and clients. So they're service-driven and service-led and service mindset-focused agencies. However, when I ask them what KPIs they have in place to measure the performance of their consultants, you know where I'm going with this, it's all sales-driven KPIs.
Yeah.
No one, very few, 1 or 2 over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years have actually said, some have NPS in there or some have, retention or something like that, which can speak to quality. But no one really has service KPI metrics. So the behaviors that agencies are driving are all sales focused. They're all activity focused.
Yeah.
Which is understandable. It's a revenue-based industry, right? It's a revenue-based business. But I don't know that it's chicken and the egg, but you're not going to win a sale if you don't provide a good service to either candidate or client. Provide a crappy service to a candidate, they'll go somewhere else. Client will do the exact same thing.
Well, no, I mean, you might win a sale, but it might be your last sale you do with that client. Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that we're talking about, the whole point of this series that we're doing is all around these super agencies. One of the things the super agencies measure and get right and obsess about is customer and candidate lifetime value. So, how do I squeeze more out of my existing client base, squeeze more of my existing candidate base, and providing a great experience so they come back, use you more, spend more money with you, tell their mates about you. That is obviously part of that journey, right?
Yeah, and it's funny. I've said for many years now, recruitment as a whole has largely and for long had a poor perception. It's been put in that kind of car sales, real estate bucket. They don't get back to you. They only, it's a numbers game. You treat it as a number, blah, blah, blah. I don't think we have a perception problem. I think we have a messaging problem that people don't really understand what we do because we don't tell them what we do. I see a lot of agencies on LinkedIn go, here's our top billers for last quarter. We've got a top billers lunch, etc. It's all revenue focused rewards as well on that front. I never see an agency go, we've taken our top service-based consultants to lunch for looking after our candidates and clients the best. Never seen it, not once in 10 years, which is disappointing because our clients, recruiter insider clients, should be doing that as well. So I'm going to jump on them with that. But I only thought of this the other day, to be fair. But it is funny because I see it a lot, and especially at the start of a new quarter, you see all of that. I think it largely comes down to that it's not being a focus or a priority because sales, the revenue component, is the number one metric every consultant is performance managed on, not anything to do with service.
Yeah, and again, as you know, we do a lot of stuff around business development strategies for recruitment businesses and recruiters, and within that is account penetration is a big part of new business development. But people don't see that. They go, we've got a big focus on this month around winning new business. Okay, great. Why don't you focus on the low-hanging fruit with your existing customers already? And the amount of people I've spoken to, and we've implemented this, and it's made such a quick difference, a quick win, is like, okay, let's obsess about referrals, repeat business, and recommendations, and let's go and drive that as a channel strategy for new business development. And everyone goes, yeah, I do that anyway. People don't do it. They just like, they always go, what's your best source of clients? They go, oh, it's when I get a referral. And you get lots of those. We'll get them from time to time, but we're not deliberately going and asking and getting and creating opportunities to get referrals. That's madness when you think about it.
What I think is absolutely madness, and I completely agree with everything you said, is that I'm going to say broadly, no one likes doing cold calls, right? That's the biggest challenge a lot of agencies have with their consultants, is getting them to pick up the phone and do a cold call to win new business. You've got to majorly incentivize them, and some people just inherently don't like doing it in the first place. Isn't it easier then to make a warm call to your existing clients and grow within that business, and use the experience data and how you're representing that client in market? Show them, here's what we're putting forward, here's how we're positioning you, here's what we can do to drive this even further. We're not working with this part of the business. You love us here. Here's the proof. Can you introduce me to the other departments?
Yeah.
Like, that's just much easier than going, hey, here's who we are. Here's what we do. We've got 700 years experience doing this. No one cares. Your clients already know you and love you.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we built Operation Goldmine, to do exactly that. One of the other things, or one of the many, but one of the elements of a super agency that we're seeing at the moment is their positioning with their clients. So they don't see themselves as suppliers; they see themselves as partners. And you touched on that a second ago. And that's a massive part to us. When I look at the client experience, one of the things I see really good recruiters in this market doing really well, but naturally well, is they're very willing to go back to a customer and going, this is the recruitment process that we've just followed with you. This is where it's broken. This is where you're not playing your part properly. And this is where you're losing really high quality talent right now. What are we going to do about it? Do you see that journey happening much? And is that something like, well, do you see that happening?
Oh, we've built the product specifically to produce, and I'm not trying to pitch Recruiter Insider here, but it's just funny that everything you said then is two reports in our system that does exactly that. With a couple clicks of a button, you can literally show a client how you've represented their brand, how they've represented themselves, what the candidate thinks once they start, and then you can benchmark them against all the other clients you work with as well, and their competitors if you work with their competitors. So literally with a few clicks, you've got this to go back in. We've actually, and it's interesting you raised that kind of idea and concept. We've got a client who told me earlier this year, she's now got her clients calling her saying, hey, when can you come back in and give us more of that data on how we're data on how we're performing, because it was a UK client, on how we're performing and how we're benchmarking to our clients again, to our competitors. How often can you come back in already and do that? We want more. The funny thing is, and this is what I struggle with when I do talk to agencies, is your clients and agencies' clients, you're typically dealing with ops or procurement or TA, talent acquisition. There's one thing they love, which agencies are somewhat scared of, and it's data. They love it. They can't get enough of it. If you give it to them, they will sit there and listen and ask questions and want more from you. And that's how you get deeper into the business. But agencies, I don't think, present enough of that, especially on the experience side.
Explain to me, and again, this is not about selling Recruiter Insider, but I mean, it is to an extent, I suppose, because it does the job. How does your system then get the answer to these questions? Because you've still got to ask the client for how they're feeling, how they experience. So how is that different from a net promoter score type, asking the question 10 times type thing? How are you getting it, not that other people aren't?
It's very similar to the candidate side. Every time you fill a job or don't fill a job, we send a set of specific questions around the job brief, interview process, and placement stages of the hiring process.
Yeah.
So the hiring manager will respond to that. It collates that. So you get an insight into what the business is thinking about your service to them. But the most important data, the most intriguing data really for me, is when the candidate reviews the client. So at the interview stage and post-placement, that's data they don't have on their own business. That's incredibly fascinating.
Is that things like what they think about the client, not just the process?
Well, it's things like, did the hiring manager describe the job? Did they describe the culture and how the candidate would fit in? What's the benefits of working for the business?
Mhm.
So we map all that up and then benchmark that, so we can actually look at, here's why you're not able to secure talent, because your hiring managers can't describe what it's like to work here. They can't describe the job. They can't describe the culture. And then if they do happen to secure talent, here's what the first 30 days looks like. The hiring manager's available. I've been, set up, and the team's welcomed me. The job's what I expected. The culture's what I expected. So we map all of this together very purposefully to allow the agency to sit there and go, right, here's literally what's happening. Here's where our gaps are of our understanding of your business. So we need some more information there. Here's where your gaps are that are either hurting you secure talent or retaining them. Now, that's really useful internal data, but then you go look at how is that actually working externally versus the rest of the market. And you start to benchmark that, and there's literally reports that do that. So it's a totally, and I say this to all of our clients, that is a fundamentally different conversation to have than just sitting there going, so here's the average salary, which is useful information. Here's the average time to fill. We were working on 10 jobs in the last 6 months. We had 5,000 applications. We weeded that down to X and interviewed Y and sent you Z, and you hired these 5 people. That's the boring stuff. That's not going to grow an account. That's not going to get you being perceived as more of a partner of that client. And if you happen to drop the ball at any point, they go somewhere else because you're not adding value.
Yeah, I mean, again, if I'm looking, I'm as you're speaking, I'm thinking of my sort of super agencies that we're working with, the ones who are really flying at the moment, and where do they fit? What are they doing differently? How does this all fit in? And it's very much so aligned with what they're doing. One of the steps they're taking is they're moving from partner into consultant. So they're going, okay, not only we're not going to be a supplier to you, we'll be a partner to you. So there's KPIs on both sides of the fence here, Mr. Client or Mrs. Client. So you need to adhere to yours. I'll put a bonus and also a penalty against those KPIs. So if you do a good job, great. If you don't, you're going to feel it. So that proper partnership piece. But that then leads into the next stage and almost like creates the opportunity or earning the right to then be a bit more consultative. So are you suggesting, with your data that comes out of this, with the feedback that we can give clients, that a recruitment company should then go to that next stage and say, we're going to provide you a consultancy service to help you build a better way of working as a hiring company?
Absolutely. And it's not just, take our platform out of it. If you're collecting the right information from your candidates and clients and measuring the process, you should be able to walk back in and have identified gaps of what you're doing, but also of what they're doing, and then go, right, here's the proof. Here's the data. Data doesn't lie. We want to provide training to your hiring managers as the first point, because the more skilled, and I ask this of consultants when they collect a job brief, are you asking the hiring manager, when did they last interview and how comfortable are they in doing so? Because it's funny, no one prepares the hiring manager for interview, but we all prepare the candidates. And hiring managers, we call them hiring managers, but no one in the world has a job title called hiring manager.
Yeah.
We assume they know what they're doing and that they're comfortable and confident in doing it, but very few are. So it gives you that opportunity to go back and go, right, here's the process. We've identified some gaps. We're going to provide training to your hiring managers. That's part of our consulting package, 2-3 hour workshop, etc. We're going to see how that impacts the ability to secure talent. Then we're going to have a look at your onboarding process, your first 30 days. What does that look like? We collect feedback on that and start mapping that through. Because if you can improve securing talent and retention, you're not just an agency anymore. You're not just a number that someone could pick up the phone tomorrow and go, hey, we also recruit for XYZ. Do you want to try us? We've got a great candidate for you. They turn around and go, no, it's not that we have a PSL. It's like, we've got an agency. They're embedded in our business. Thank you, but no thanks.
Recruitment agencies talk a lot about relationships, but how do you actually measure them? That is where Recruiter Insider comes in. Now, Recruiter Insider collects verified feedback from candidates and hiring managers at every stage of the recruitment process, turning real experiences into actionable performance data. See what's driving your fill rates, identify opportunities to improve consultant performance, and strengthen client relationships with evidence, not just assumptions. And with Recruiter Insider Academy, you can now train consultants on exactly the behaviors that move the needle. If you want to turn relationships into revenue, visit Recruiter Insider today at recruiterinsider.com.
Forget technology for a second. Forget
Yeah.
if you were to thinking about the candidate experience. Let's go with candidate experience. If you were to look at the candidate experience, if you were to improve the candidate experience in 3 areas specifically, what 3 areas would you focus on as they'll have the biggest positive impact on how candidates feel about working with a recruiter?
I can probably point it down to 2.
Okay.
Not even 3. Make sure you are complete. Actually, we'll go 3 because it comes back to the job brief.
Okay.
There's a big gap in the job brief that I often see, and it often messes up the hiring process to begin with. So one of the questions I focus on in collecting a job brief with consultants is you're going to ask what the start date is. It's a bit of a no-brainer. When do you want this person to ideally start? And we often work backwards from there and ask how many interview stages are in the process. Is there a psychometric test or a skills test that they have to do? Who's involved in those different interview stages? Most people will ask that. There's one key question. It's very apt for this time of year in the middle of August to be asking, or even back in May. You should have been asking it then. You should ask it at every time. Any of those people involved in those different stages of the process, those different interviews, do they have holidays between now and the start date that we need to consider? That's going to either impact a shift of when we need to do those interviews or feedback on those interviews. That means that that start date now isn't going to happen or we need to work around it. Better off knowing that at the start, because that ties directly into giving that information to the candidate.
Yep.
That 41%, 97% uplift I mentioned before, explaining the interview process and timeframes, all comes back to knowing that information from the job brief. But it's funny, I had a chat with a consultant, or she's a former consultant, sorry. She was 10 years a contract recruiter. And I was having this exact conversation with her. And she said, well, interestingly, I used to ask the candidate, every candidate, do you have holidays coming up between now and this start date? She'd ask it, it was just a natural question to ask. She said, but I never asked the client. I can't begin to tell you how many times it got shifted because everyone involved in the process had a holiday. We always ask the candidate, but not the client. So that ties into that explained interview process and timeframes. And then the third point would be preparing candidates for interview. Really bloody well, really well. I know every consultant does this. I would be reviewing just the depth and information of what you're actually doing with that, and how much every consultant is adhering to what you want to be achieving in that, because the candidate needs to feel confident going into that interview. It makes a massive difference, but they need the right information as well. So it's not just, hey, here's some interview tips, guides, etc., which is nice and fluffy and should be done still. Are we preparing them as well as what we possibly can be by giving them the right resources on the company, what news to check out, who the person is they're meeting with, what they're, do they like cricket? Do they like rugby? Do they go on holidays? Do they anything that's going to help that candidate build rapport and feel better walking into that interview to perform better? That's hands down what you should be doing as well.
Brilliant. Okay, brilliant. I've got 2 final questions for you. If we're going to go to if a recruiter is going to go to market and say we're no longer sales led, we are experience led, and we live and breathe and die by it, and we actually do it. How do you think they could use it as a BD tool? Because I'm quite interested. Because apart from the obvious, I can win more business from my existing client type conversation. How is this part of the pitch?
Yeah, so I looked at, this is a roundabout way to get there. So I looked at 100 agency websites not long ago. And I was looking for 2 specific words, and 2 words I hear often, and no doubt you've heard this often and see it often as well. I was looking for 2 words on their homepage: expert and specialist. Out of 100, 80 of them had one or both of those words on their homepage. So everyone's going to market sounding exactly the same. Exactly the same. You pick up the phone, you say, hey, we're experts in recruiting for construction or IT, Java developers, whatever it might be. And that person's had 10 other calls from 10 other recruiters saying the exact same thing. There's no point of difference. There's no way you're standing out with that strategy. So the idea of having this data is not to say that this backs up that you're an expert or a specialist. It's actually to show the prospect that you know how to run a really good hiring process. Because if you're asking the right questions, you can actually show them the outputs or the results of those satisfaction scores to say that here's how we support our clients throughout the hiring process to achieve the outcome they're looking for. We have a 97% satisfaction on the shortlist fits the brief. Our clients say their satisfaction on us understanding their job requirements is 98 out of 100. We understand their market. We provide market intelligence. We follow their hiring process. We support their onboarding, whatever it might be, what those questions are. I'm reeling off the ones I can remember from our platform. You've got evidence of not just, hey, we fill jobs. That fill rate percentage number is obviously going to be important. If it's really good, you should leverage that. But to show how you support through the hiring process, because all of those elements, all of those questions are kind of reeled off then, are no doubt problems they've had with other agencies in the past.
Yeah.
So you're actually showing them first up, A, we fill jobs. That's what we do. We recruit in the space that you're looking to recruit people in. But we manage the process. We've got the evidence to say our clients, the shortlist fits the brief, whatever it is. Here's the satisfaction scores. It builds trust straight away.
Yeah.
You're not just saying, hey, we've got 500 years of experience in doing this, trust us. Evidence of the hiring process of how you support them. And I've got story after story about clients using the data to win it, but hilariously not using the data, not winning the business, realizing, oh, oops, we forgot to put it in, going back, putting it in, winning the business. This is a very specific role as a CFO role, one of our clients who used the data brilliantly. Forgot to put the data into the pitch, went back and put it in, and the CEO came back and said, I'm giving you the job because of that evidence you provided of how well you support your candidates and clients. Like, guys, why did you forget that the first time?
Yeah, absolutely.
No idea. So it's just that it's you're going to stand out. You're going to have that point of difference.
And if you position yourself properly as an exclusive partner, retain all that sort of good stuff that the super agencies definitely do, then you're representing that client's brand as well. So actually, by providing a great service, you're saying, actually, I'm going to do that under your brand, which is good and bad if you get it wrong, right? So,
but I think you're more so also putting your money where your mouth is as well.
Yeah.
You're not just saying, hey, we're going to fill the job. We're going to make sure that all the different parts of the hiring process that we've just shown you, we've got really good feedback from our clients on. We're going to do that for you as well. So they're going to hold you to that.
We want to help one of the members win a pitch a couple of months ago. It was a lovely pitch, actually. I was quite involved with it. I quite enjoyed it. I love selling still. It's great fun. Selling recruitment. And I think I can still do it. And the pitch we won, it's a lovely contract, but we took a percentage of the full fee of the whole. It was like a 6-month program. We took a percentage of the whole program, but I think it worked out to be about 6%. And we actually put that against a number of KPIs, against service-led KPIs. And we basically said, and to the clients, is basically if we're going to agree the measurements for these KPIs, it's really, really clear. If we underperform in those KPIs, the margin will drop down. So, your average margin will go from what was 24% to 22%. If we over exceed in those KPIs, which will have a positive impact on your business, that goes up, and actually the margin goes up. And again, that piece around putting your money where your mouth is, or whatever you put where your mouth is. Now, that's what the client was saying. So I love the fact that you're so obsessed about the quality of the service as much as delivering the service that you're willing to put margin on top of that. And I think that was, but that also showed to me that another example of a super agency that's got a real good relationship with the client, where they're saying, well, if you over exceed, we'll pay you for it. Why not? That seems to make sense. It's fair.
No, I've never heard that before. That's very brave. I love it. More agencies, and it just holds you accountable, right? You're not gonna drop the ball, and it's about being really transparent with the client. I think that will build greater trust than saying, "Hey, this is what we recruit for. We filled 1,500 jobs in the last 3 years in this space." That's what they expect from you. What they don't expect is to be held accountable to what you've just said on service.
Yeah,
I think that's brilliant.
Yeah, but it's also a great way of just getting your average margins up at the same time for doing what you should be doing in the first place. Let's be honest about it. So, Justin, listen, I love chatting to you. There's so much we can talk about here, and I'm massively passionate about our industry and that piece you talked about, you know, the reputation of the recruitment sector. You know, it has for many years had a slightly tarnished, in some cases, reputation that comes down to experience. You know, in an industry where you're letting lots of people down naturally, you're going to get naturally bad experience. So whatever you can do to improve that, it's got to be a bloody good thing, right? It just makes sense. Without selling Recruiter Insider, but by selling Recruiter Insider, if somebody wanted to start on the process, they go, okay, I get what you guys have said. It makes sense. I can see there's a real measurable, tangible return on investment here. Where should they start there? That's the next step for someone to take to try and get their head into this properly?
That's a very good question without selling Recruiter Insider.
All right, pitch it. I don't mind.
Think about what it is you want to achieve out of the back of it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to improve the hiring process? Do you want to, and you need some primary goals. I think the most important thing is who's going to own this in your business. That's obviously where a lot of tech, if we bring tech back into the conversation, fails. And it's interesting, I'm having a chat with an agency at the moment, and they're like, oh, the sales directors are going to drive this. I'm like, no. That's potentially the worst team you want doing it. Because they're revenue driven, right? They have a different mindset. It's actually every part of the business drives this. Marketing drives the output of getting that message out there. The consultants drive it on a day-to-day business by delivering the experience. The team leaders manage the consultants. Ops looks over the whole thing and makes sure the systems run smoothly. So it's actually a whole of business thing. Yep. You need to want to do this. You need to want to also improve, because feedback in its primary essence is about improvement. You get all the nice fluffy marketing stuff out of the back of it, which is great. And there's so many ways you can use it from BD and with your existing clients, but it is about improvement. So you've got to want to improve. I think that has to be the mindset first. If you want to improve, get started on looking at how you're going to do it. There's tools out there. You can use a SurveyMonkey. You can use Google Forms, you know, all very manual. There's obviously our product. There's, you know, tools there that you can use. But I think the first thing is to acknowledge that you actually want to improve.
Yep.
Because you might not, and it's funny, when I run through the questions with agencies, they go, oh, we're great at doing that. We're not going to fail on that question. And invariably 2 months in, they're like, oh, damn it.
Yeah, very nice.
We're not as good as we kind of thought. So none of this stuff goes public if you don't want it to also. You get to focus on what to improve and then take that to market. And there's always stuff you can take to market. Like you don't have to wait very long. Testimonials, you can use a load of them. But I think the first place to start is really, do you want to improve?
Yeah.
If that's a tick, okay, now how do we go about looking at what feedback we want to collect? That is going to be a benefit to the candidate and the client to provide. It's going to help you as well.
Definitely. And I think, thank you. And I think, you know, what the DNA of these super agencies that we're seeing emerge at the moment and we're working with, you know, they obsess about continuous improvement. Yeah. And so if you don't think you want to improve or need to improve, I think you're probably missing the point here a little bit. So, yeah. Listen, Justin, as always, great to catch up. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for those of you who've listened in today. If you want to find out more about Recruiter Insider, how you can embed this into your business, reach out to Justin, have a conversation with him, and have a look at his toolkit and what he's up to. For those of you who aren't going to do that but just want to improve, just think about your customer experience, the candidate experience. It is a business development tool as much as anything. It's a cultural improvement tool because the pride it creates internally within your business is a massive part of that. So why wouldn't you want to do it, as far as I'm concerned? Thanks everyone for your time. Justin, thanks again, and look forward to catching up on the next one soon. Thanks. Take care, everyone.